Hiya, Paul Higgs here, and welcome to this week's Inside Property Development. So, just in case you're new and you don't know, what we do every week is usually either interview various experts in the land planning and property development industry, and also talk to other interested parties involved in all different parts of the, hopefully interested in what needs to happen in order to get more good quality housing and commercial space created in the right way. So, and every few weeks we do a Q&A thing where people send in their questions around all of the key areas that we need to know about and understand. So that's finance, land, planning, design and build. And this week we're looking at questions people have sent in around building stuff. So, first question I've got here. So, what's the biggest challenge I faced in the build stage of a project, and how did I get over it? So, I've built a lot of stuff over the years, been involved in the building of a lot of stuff. So, there's been a lot of challenges, right? Building stuff can be super complicated and tricky, can be relatively simple, but most of the time it's not, depending on what you're doing. So I've had a lot of challenges. There can be a lot of challenges when it comes to building. I'm probably going to talk about this site where we are now. One, it's my most recent, and here we are. But also, it actually has, out of all of my career, been probably the most challenging, actually, out of everything I've ever done. And the reason for that is this. It is a very unusual, non-standard design, and we've actually been building it through one of the most difficult couple of years, certainly I've ever known, and even when I talk to people that are sort of much older and more experienced than me, they also tell me that the last couple of years has been super, super tricky. Main reason being the procurement issues to do with the availability and cost of materials, driven by all sorts of things, including Brexit, ship getting stuck in the Suez Canal, the war in the Ukraine, and a whole load of other stuff has made things, build costs basically gone bonkers over the last couple of years. They've stabilised now, which is good, but completely throughout the construction of this project, it's been really, really difficult. So that's been a biggest challenge. I mean, if and when that ever happens to you, that's always going to be a big challenge. And it's been exacerbated here because we've got such an unusual design, which we had to have in order to get planning. Now, if you watch any other episodes when I've actually talked about this site where we are now, it had a 35-year history of planning refusals, and it was going to take something quite exceptional if planning was ever to be won on this site. So we came up with something quite exceptional, did eventually win planning at appeal. It's all finished now, super sustainable, net zero, looking great, I think, but it was really not quick, cheap or easy to build because it was such an unusual design. So, challenges on this one were, let me jump back a bit, just as a little example. Now, I was at a NHBC, National House Building Council conference, about a year ago now, actually, where the guys there were sort of looking at all of the biggest issues around construction, because obviously, they're warranty providers. They want to make sure everything goes right and people do things in the best, most efficient way. And one of the things they were talking about are the things that you should try to avoid at all costs. And there was a big long list of about 10 things, and effectively we had them all here on this site. And some of those things are, non-standard materials, non-standard details, lots of different funny angles, lots of weird junction details and connections. Basically, all complicated, tricky, and therefore expensive stuff to deal with, which unfortunately I had on this build just because that was the only design that was ever going to win planning. Yeah, so that in itself created a whole load of challenges, coupled with the fact that, as I mentioned, we had the biggest build cost increases we've ever had since the Second World War. Depending on what data and statistics you look at, things have gone up between 30 and 40% over the last 2 or 3 years. Stabilised now, but nevertheless, it's been a big problem. So that in itself created a big challenge. On this one, we had £250,000 worth of Japanese knotweed that needed to be disposed of properly. Some ton of demolition to deal with. It was a very constrained site. We had no direct or easy access to drainage. We needed piled foundations. The site doesn't drain at all. It's on a bit of a slope. So lots and lots of things that cause problems. And on top of that, this one here was a JV with the landowner. And as a result, we were sort of driven to try to get in and out and get these things built and sold ASAP, partly because of the landowner's circumstances. So what that meant is we couldn't really hang around to get the 100% detailed design complete before we started, which can be dangerous. In an ideal world, you wouldn't be building anything until it's fully designed, and you can cost, price, tender, everything before you even start. One of the reasons lots of major house builders have their standard house types, so they know exactly what they're building before they start. Now we couldn't do that here because of the time pressures we were under, which basically meant we had to start. So not ideal, but it wasn't the end of the world. We'd done it all okay, but it just put me and my team under massive pressure because it's just not the best way. But site and vendor circumstances here meant that we had to do that. So tricky build, I suppose, because it was non-standard, exacerbated by the fact that it was through really strange times when build costs were rising super quickly. And on top of that, a lot of material just wasn't available. So basically what that meant is we had to do quite a lot of value engineering throughout the process to find different ways to do things, because stuff, the ways we planned to do it, you just couldn't do it because you couldn't get the gear. So, now if you weren't very experienced, and you sort of couldn't perhaps see ahead and find no other ways of doing stuff, that could have been like a real killer. It was a problem anyway. It wasn't ideal. Build costs went up big time on this one. If we weren't, if we were less experienced, they could have gone up, 3 times more than they actually did. So anyway, that's one of the biggest challenges I faced at the build stage. Just a quick word to say thank you to our sponsors, LandTech, creators of Land Insight, which is the industry-leading bit of software to help developers find and analyse the potential of real 100% off-market development opportunities. I've been involved in the business for over 10 years now, and if you don't know what it basically does what people like me used to have to do the old-fashioned way, which is hunt around and get together all of the key information that's needed in order to make sensible decisions on the development potential of land. So that's planning data, market research, lists of all of the various constraints, environment and agency information, you name it, massive long list of all of the stuff that you need in order to find out who owns land, what policy constraints there might be, and exactly what you may or may not be able to do with it. All of the industry leading developers use it, and also the most clued up smaller ones. So if you're not already using it and you want to trial for yourself, have a look in the show notes. You'll find a link to get a free trial, test it for yourself, see what you think, and hopefully get busy finding real off-market development opportunities. So thanks again to our show sponsors, LandTech, and let's get back to the show. On to the next one. So ties in nice. What can we do to combat the rising costs of materials so that we can actually make money in house builds? Well, have fixed designs as early as possible, really, and I suppose also designing alternatives so if something becomes unavailable material wise, you can quickly perhaps swap something in and do things in a slightly different way. It's what we had to do here. Luckily enough, it seems that build costs have stabilised, but to be quite honest, combating rising build costs, sometimes there's just not a lot you can do about it. Now, I probably won't go on this one into a whole load of details about different contract types and ways of building things, but I'm sure there'll be some people out there that will say, well, you could have a fixed price contract. And by all means, actually, any people have got things to say on this, please do comment, because it's how we all learn. But people will talk about fixed price contracts, which in theory are good, because at the end of the day we all want certainty. But in order to have a real solid fixed price contract, you do need to have a detailed design that itself is fixed and is not going to change. Because of course what happens the second you start trying to tweak, change things, or you discover stuff that you didn't know about, then you've opened the door to it no longer being fixed, and that's what happens a lot. So to have a real 100% genuinely fixed price contract that doesn't ever go up above what you thought it was going to be is tricky. And now, interestingly, let's take the last couple of years for example. There are builders and developers that thought they had fixed price contracts with contractors. But of course, if material prices and labour to a slightly lesser extent, but have gone up 30 or 40% over the last couple of years. Now, to try to force a contractor to stick to that original price when they can't any longer actually even do it for that price, let alone make any money. They very well may give up and go bust, and a lot of contractors have gone bust over the last couple of years. So what happens then? You thought you had a fixed price contract, you try to force a contractor to stick to that price, they can't stick to that price, therefore they give up or go bust, and then you're in the worst possible situation whereby you've still got to find someone else to finish it and build it, and they're obviously going to only price it at the date cost, and on top of that, you've actually got the worst of all worlds, because when someone's coming along trying to pick up, and follow on from someone else's work, you don't know what you're dealing. I mean, it's just an absolute nightmare. So, and that has happened a fair bit over the last couple of years. So, combating rising build costs is really tricky, and it's important for people to understand that, because I'm sort of largely talking to here. But actually, for all part of this podcast is about cluing up other people in the industry. So planners, planning committees, landowners, everyone else needs to understand this as well. Just how risky it is, because like say, property development is not some easy get rich quick thing where it always goes the right way. Very often it goes the wrong way, and it's one of the reasons we haven't got many SME developers and house builders left anymore, is just because it's so risky. Managing costs is a big part of that. So really, really difficult to manage, even when you know how. A lot of it out your hands. Okay, which sort of leads me on quite nicely to the next one. What would I say is the best way for developers and builders to de-risk their projects, given that there is so much risk? So, personally, I think the best way to de-risk a project is to add as much value as possible before you've even started. So that's why, for many years now, my whole model of my business has been to find 100% off-market development opportunities, and then, hopefully negotiate and secure them on sensible terms, and then add maximum planning value to them. So you've actually created some sort of planning profit in the deal before you've even started. And that sort of becomes a bit of a buffer and effectively an insurance policy, so that, if things do go a bit wrong, things take longer, prices go up when you do build, at least you've got a bit of a buffer to start with. Now, conversely, if you're buying sites that already have planning permission, there almost certainly will be competition for those sites. You can't really have a 100% off-market site that's got planning permission because it's in the public domain and people are going to know about it. So most of the time you've got a site with planning. People really need sites with planning. We all want to keep building and, create more housing, amongst other things. When you get sites with planning, various builders and developers are looking at them. They really want to buy them. So, of course, they're bidding the price up. And as they're bidding their price up, they're bidding their profit margin away. So basically what that means is they end up becoming risky deals. Yeah. Now, they're much more susceptible to things going wrong if and when costs go up because your margins have been squeezed before you've even started. So that's why, personally, I never, ever buy sites with planning because it's just way too risky. Having said that, if you don't know how to find off-market sites yourself and add maximum planning value, that's all you're really left to. But assuming that is the case, so right, you've bought a site with planning, you've got a site with planning. Then the way you need to manage your risk is by analysing all of the constraints, researching all of the constraints before you've even started. So you know exactly what the ground conditions are, you know exactly what's under the ground, you know exactly what's surrounding the site, you know where all of your services are, you know the exact cost and need or not for diversions, connections. Basically, super detailed research on the proper cost of everything, and then factoring that in to a super detailed design, working with good consultants so you can effectively value engineer things to work out, okay, well, what is the quickest, cheapest, most efficient way to build things? And quickest, cheapest, most efficient, by the way, does not mean doing cheap rubbish. This is all within the realms of actually creating high quality stuff at the same time. So again, not a tricky, not an easy circle to square, but I suppose that's what you need to do. So short answer in terms of how you de-risk projects. Well, you do it, de-risk them by adding maximum planning value yourself, if you can, or at the very least, making sure you have properly analysed and assessed and costed the best way to do things and the way to get around all of the constraints. And on development sites, there are many potential costs and unknowns. You need to know about those things before you start and factor them into the design and the build. So, final little question here. What are the main challenges when it comes to building sustainably, right? So, well, look, there is a big push, quite rightly, for us to all build more sustainably. And I suppose, the biggest challenge around that actually really is to do with cost. Yeah. Now, as a general rule, let's take this one again here. These houses are fully net zero, EPC A-rated, super sustainable. They're not quite passive house standard, but they're not far off in terms of their air tightness and things like that. So, as a result, they were not cheap to build. I'm hoping that the market will appreciate that, and therefore we'll get a little bit of a premium. But of course, nevertheless, it is and was the right way to do things. But the main challenge is when it comes to building, the more sustainably you build, at the moment, unfortunately, it does tend to be a little bit more expensive. Hopefully that will change as meeting new requirements, recent improvements to the building regs, the forthcoming future home standard. Once all of this stuff becomes a little bit more normalised and everyone knows exactly what it is and what they're doing, we'll all get better at finding more cost efficient ways to do this stuff. But actually at the moment, like for like, you're building an EPC A-rated house is going to be more expensive than building an EPC C-rated house. So cost really is the biggest challenge when it comes to building sustainable, and I suppose to some extent knowledge as well, because people are a lot of people are used to doing things the old-fashioned way. Not so many people are that clued up on doing things the new sustainable stuff, the new sustainable way. So anyway, I suppose that's the short answers there. As always, if you've got different views and comments, please do stick them down below if you're here watching on YouTube. If you're listening on the podcast and you've got something interesting to say that we can relay to everyone else out there, or you've got questions for future episodes, then you can also send me a DM on Paul Higgs Official on Instagram. So that's it. Hopefully there's been at least a little bit of interesting stuff there for you. Do like, comment and subscribe here on YouTube if that's where you're watching, because that way we can hopefully build more interest, get more people involved in the conversation. So hopefully all together we can learn and collaborate to get more good quality housing and commercial space created, and together build a better world. So that's it, and I'll see you on the next one. Thanks for tuning in to Inside Property Development. Please remember to like and subscribe. Do join us every week where we'll be speaking to house builders, developers, experts, planners and everyone involved in trying to get more much needed housing created the right way. We'll learn together how we can collaborate rather than fight, and by working together we can all help create better places, spaces and homes and a much more beautiful world.